All right, it is officially 11 a.m., so we will go ahead and get started with this month's webinar. Today we're going to be talking about mastering OneDrive for business. So before we get started, just a couple housekeeping things I'd like to go over. We'll start with some quick introductions. So my name is Tim Tausch. I'm a project manager here at Sundog. Joining me also is Mallory Albrecht, and she is our marketing manager. She's going to be helping keep everything up and running behind the scenes today, as well as monitoring our questions chat. So if you do have any questions as we're going through the webinar, just feel free to submit them with your name for tracking purposes. As I'm talking, again, just feel free to post your questions and I will try and answer them as they come up. If we do start to see a large number of questions coming in at once, we will start holding off on answers until the end of the webinar, but I'll try to make sure that we get to as many of them as possible at the end. All right, we will also be recording today's webinar, so at the end of this, it will be posted on our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to listen to this and share it with your other team members as well. Again, for when posting questions, please make sure to include your first name and last initial. That way we can help for attendance keeping. So today specifically, we're going to be covering OneDrive pretty in depth. I'm going to be doing a screen share of some live demos here, so it should give you a pretty good idea of what you're looking at when you're starting to use your OneDrive. So from here on, I'm going to jump over to a live demo. So one moment here while I switch screens. Okay. Right. All right, so we got our demo going here. So a few things to get started with. So let's talk a little bit what OneDrive is specifically before we dive into the details of how we're going to use it. So OneDrive is a cloud-hosted file sharing platform and file storage platform through Microsoft 365. So what that means is any data, files, pictures, things like that that you're storing in your OneDrive account is stored in the Microsoft Cloud. And the really nice thing about that is it's not local to your computer anymore, which means if you have something happen with your computer, if it has a hardware failure, if it's a laptop and you lose it, you don't have to worry about losing your files because they're going to be in the cloud. The other nice thing with that is you're going to be able to access them from pretty much anywhere in the world that has internet access. So the nice thing with OneDrive is you can access it with the web app, you can access it with the desktop app, and there's also mobile apps for your phones and tablets that you can use to access it as well. So it's really nice in the fact that you can get to it from wherever you need to be. The other nice thing with that is it's all synced in live time. So if you're working on your laptop, you go to close your laptop and then you got to travel somewhere, then you can continue working on that same document from the app on your phone. And then when you get to where you're going, maybe you've got another desktop in the other office you're traveling to, and then you just jump on that desktop, again, open up the app, it's all synced in live time, and you have that same document there. So just a little bit more about what a cloud hosted platform is like that. So basically, all of these documents and all of this data is stored in a Microsoft data center, and they have dozens of them all over the world, and they're backed up. So even if one has an issue, it's going to fail over, and you're still going to have access to all of your files and documents. So again, it's storing your data somewhere else on a server that's going to be a lot more secure and backed up than it would be if it were just, for example, being stored on your desktop locally. So let's jump into a little bit of how the OneDrive works and how you would use it in your day-to-day. So what I'm going to be using here is I'm just going to use a demo account that I set up for myself to kind of go over some of these things. So to get started, let's start with the web app version. So when you log into your Microsoft account, so you go to Microsoft or office.com, you sign in, you go to your OneDrive, and then it'll take you here. So this is going to be the landing page for your OneDrive account. And if you've ever used SharePoint before, this is going to have a very similar feel to SharePoint. Microsoft OneDrive is it's kind of like your own personal SharePoint. So you still have the ability to share files and you have the ability to receive shares from other people. But mainly OneDrive is geared towards being your personal SharePoint. Again, if you've used SharePoint in the past, that's a good way to look at it. So a couple things I do want to go over here. So starting with the home page, you'll see all of your recent files and you can sort them by file type. So for example, if I only want to see Word documents, you just click that and it'll just show you the Word documents. Again, all the recent ones are here. It'll show the last date you opened them, who owns them, other activity on when you edited them. So a lot of things like that. Moving on to the My Files tab here. So this is the root level of where everything in your OneDrive account is going to be shared or shown. So basically anything under your My Files tab it's going to be here. So if you're ever trying to find something, this is the place you want to look because this shows everything at the very core level. And there's also details here again about when it was modified, who modified. So if it's a shared document, you can see other people that have been in the documents working on them. It'll show how many files are in folders, or if it's an individual file, it'll show you the size of that. And it'll also show you the information about sharing. So here's a demo folder I made earlier and I shared it out. You can see that the sharing status on this one is shown as shared. Other ones are shown as private. Is what that means is that I have not shared them with anyone and they're only available to me. Moving on to the shared one here. So you can see files that you've shared with other people, as well as files that you've shared with you. I haven't had any shared with me on this account yet, so there's none shown here. And the shared with you one shows files that you've shared to other people. I'd recommend coming in here once in a while and clearing things out just to make sure that you haven't shared out a file in the past that really shouldn't be shared anymore. And then the recycle bin, again, just like the recycle bin on your desktop, this is going to have files that you have deleted. So here's another demo file that I had earlier that I had shared out that I deleted. And so that's going to show in here. They will sit in here for a little while, depending on the settings of your Microsoft tenant, that how it was set up by your admin, but usually it sits in here for anywhere from 1 to 3 months before it goes into final deletion and you can't recover it. So at this point, you can recover files from the recycle bin if they're shown in here. So another thing that I want to point out here is going to be how do you get your files into OneDrive? There's a couple different ways that you can get files into OneDrive. Now, if you're strictly working with the web interface like we're looking at now, there's going to be a couple options. So the first option is to use the upload button, and that's shown right here at the top. So you can click on that. You can upload individual files or whole folders. So if we click on files, it's then going to allow you to browse your local desktop. So for example, I can go to the desktop here, and if I want to find a file, I can just click on a file, and then I can upload it. And then it'll show up here. You can also do the same process for folders. Again, just go down folders, and it'll let you upload specific folders. The other really cool thing you can do with Automate with OneDrive that I won't dig in too much today because I don't want to take up too much time. I got to keep it a little bit condensed here for what we have. So OneDrive has the ability to use Microsoft Power Automate to create flow rules. And basically what that does is that allows you to streamline your business practices, applications, whatever you need to do. So for example, if you want to set it up so that every time you get an email with a specific word in the subject line and it has an attachment, you can create an automate flow rule to pull that attachment out of the email and then drop it into a specific folder in your OneDrive. So like, for example, if you're in the finance department and you get invoices every month from a specific vendor, you can actually create a folder for that vendor, create a flow rule, and then every time you receive an email from that vendor, it's going to know to pull that PDF invoice and then drop it into the corresponding folder in your OneDrive account. So that is really cool for streamlining practices and keeping things organized. So again, Power Automate, that's its whole own app. I won't dig too much into that today, but no, that is a feature that you can tie in with your OneDrive as well to really increase your efficiency with it. So some other options you have for uploading your files here that I just wanted to point out is you can just drag and drop. So if we minimize the screen here a little bit, and I will drag it over to the side. So for example, if on the desktop, we'll create a new Word document and we'll just call it demo. Test. And then you can just drag it and you can drop it into any folder on your OneDrive that you have open in your account. Or if you kind of hover over the top here, you'll see that you get this dotted line around the perimeter of the whole thing. You can just drop it in there. It'll take a few seconds to upload depending on the size of the document. If it's a larger one, it may take a little bit longer. And then you'll see that we uploaded that document. So we'll see right there that it uploaded. And it looks like I had a little typo when I was naming it, so we can rename that. Demo test. And just like that. So there's our document. And the really cool thing with the OneDrive Online as well is if you don't have the Microsoft apps, the Microsoft Office apps installed on your desktop, you can actually still open and edit most documents through here. So for example, this one, if we click on this from in our OneDrive here, it's going to open up the Microsoft web version of Word. So, we can just edit our documents here in the web app without having to install any applications on the desktop, which is really nice. If you either don't have the licensing for the desktop versions of the apps, or if you're just, working on a laptop that, you don't work on every day, or maybe if it doesn't have a lot of storage, something like that, you can work exclusively from the web apps. The other nice thing about working in the web apps is the fact that it's all stored online automatically. So you don't really have to worry about losing your data or forgetting to save, because almost every keystroke is saved in real time. So we can see right here, it just saved just now. So if I add a little bit more text, we'll see there's a little circle for just a split second and it already is updated to save. So even if I close out of this right now, let's see here. So even if I close out of this window right now, and then I go back and open it real quick, we're still going to have all that in there, even though I didn't click save manually, because it just automatically does it. So that's the second way that you can get files into your OneDrive with the web app. So moving on from that, let's talk a little bit about the desktop app. So to get the desktop app in the first place is really easy. So you can either just go onto your Microsoft account and go to downloads and install the apps. Or if you're running Windows 10, which everyone should hopefully be on Windows 10 or Windows 11 by this point, it usually comes pre-installed. So just go down to your start menu or your icon tray in the bottom right-hand corner, and you should see this little cloud. Now, if you haven't signed into your OneDrive before, it's going to show up as a gray cloud. If you are signed in and it's actively syncing, you're going to see a blue cloud. So that's what I have down here. So we'll go ahead and minimize this. So if we click on this, this will show some recent activity. So we can see that this demo document we just made was just created a few minutes ago. So one thing I do want to point out is you'll see that it still has the typo name here on the desktop. That's because as soon as I dragged it and dropped it into OneDrive, the version on the desktop is no longer the same one because I now uploaded it to OneDrive. And there are some other options for syncing to get around that. So I just want to point that out. So getting into the basic settings of your desktop app here. So again, the first time you're going to run it, it's going to ask you to sign in. So you sign in with your email account and password, the same one you use for your Outlook account. And let's take a look at a few things in the settings here. So I just kind of want to run through each of these and explain a little bit about what they do. So these are all the default settings, so I haven't changed any of these yet. So under these general ones, start automatically and automatically pause when it's on a meter network, I recommend leaving those as is. Unless you have very specific reasons to not have it start automatically, maybe if you're on working on a hotspot or you have very limited storage on your local computer, maybe you would want to change that. But otherwise, I would recommend leaving all of these settings as they are. You can adjust your notifications. Normally, by default, it's going to warn you when you're deleting something that it's going to be removed from the cloud as well. And another one here that I'm going to cover in a little bit more detail in a few minutes is going to be your files on demand. So basically, is what this does is allow you to pick and choose what you do and don't download to the local computer. And we'll dig into that in a few minutes. But here's the option here to enable or disable that. So some other settings here, you can have multiple accounts signed into OneDrive at one time. So right now I've just got this one test account that I just set up. So that's what this one is. You also can sync additional locations. So OneDrive integrates with a lot of other applications. One of them that you will very commonly see is Microsoft Teams. So when you create a team in Teams, there's going to be a file section of that team. And when you're in there, you can choose to sync it to your desktop so that it's available for you to access. So for example, if we open up the File Explorer here and we go down here, we'll see that I have this Sundog projects team that I created, and this is just another test one. So one thing I want to show you real quick, if we go in here, so we go to my Teams app, and I created this team. I called it Sundog's project, and I put some demo documents in here. So when I create this team, again, Teams, a whole other category we can get into. We do have some other videos on that, so I won't overlap too much of that here. But basically, when you have a team created, you get a file section for every team. And this file section is basically kind of tied into its own little SharePoint site on the back end. So since Teams and SharePoint and OneDrive all kind of tie together, you have the ability to sync these files to your local computer. So the way you do that is when you have your team open, you'll see there's the sync button right here. Now I already clicked this, so it's going to duplicate. But basically, you'll get this option here that says, "Do you want to open this?" We'll click on Open, and it's going to say I'm already syncing it because I did it earlier to set it up. But if you hadn't, it would just say you are now syncing. And is what you get then is in your local file explorer, which is the same one that we've all been using for since the beginning of Windows, pretty much to find all of our files. We're going to have this file under here, and we'll have this team name, the Sundog projects here. And so you'll see that this is an exact copy of what's here in the cloud version. So we're looking at this one online in the web, but it's also accessible here on our local file explorer in the format that a lot of us are used to seeing. So we can create documents here just like normal. We can go new, create all of our documents we want to. We can drag and drop them. We can create new folders. So for example, if I want to create a new folder, we'll do that. We'll put that in there. We'll see that syncing up. And I'm going to go over what all these different statuses mean in a few minutes as well. So don't worry. And then after we give it a few minutes, this folder will pop up in the web version here. So if we go and we refresh the page, it should pop up for us. So there it is. So there's our new demo folder that we just created from our local desktop web or file explorer. So that's a pretty cool feature. So if you are more accustomed to working in your regular file explorer, but maybe some other members on your team prefer working in the web version, you can still work together because it's all synced, which is really, really cool. So again, back to the settings here. So some other things I just want to run through again. So that's what these locations are. So every team that you sync with is going to show up as a different location, and it's going to show up as an additional folder under your company name. So another really cool feature with OneDrive that it's going to allow you is to do backups of your local workstation. So in the past, a lot of times I've seen it if your computer has a catastrophic failure, there's a pretty good chance that you've lost all the files on that computer, unless you specifically went out and were doing backups either manually or maybe you were paying for some other software to do backups for you. So the really cool thing with OneDrive is it just includes a backup feature with standard license that OneDrive comes with. So when you set up OneDrive on your computer for the first time, it will walk you through the setup process of doing backups. And you can always change it at another time. So if we go to manage backups, We'll see right now that it's backing up this computer. So everything on the desktop in my documents folder and in my pictures folder is currently being backed up. And it also shows me how much space I have left. Most standard OneDrive accounts will give you 1 terabyte of storage. You can upgrade that with additional licensing. But right now we can see that it's backing up all of these. So for example, if I have some files on my desktop that are really, really big files, or they're just files that aren't that important to me and I don't want to back them up, it's really easy to just click on Stop Backup, and it'll ask if you're sure, and you can stop backing them up. And so you'll notice that a lot of icons just disappeared from my desktop. That is because those are icons that were actually from another computer that I had that had the OneDrive backup enabled. And that kind of points out another really cool feature of this is when you have it enabled, it will synchronize between all of your devices that you have this set up on. So basically, if I want to get those back, I'll just turn that back on, and it may take a few minutes to sync, but we'll see all those popped up. So a lot of these documents are not actually living on this computer. They're from one of my other computers that I have the OneDrive backup sync turned on. And you can kind of tell that because they have these little icons in the bottom left. You can see that these are little cloud icons. The little cloud means that it the file itself does not specifically live in this computer, to whereas some of these other ones that don't, these ones live on this computer specifically. So if I would go to another computer, I'm not going to see these ones on this left-hand side. But the ones on the right-hand side that have the little cloud, that means that they are stored in the cloud and therefore synced down to all of my other computers that have this particular OneDrive account signed into. So that's another really cool feature with this backup feature. Um, so really, if I were to have this computer just totally fail today, is all I would have to do is once I get my new computer in, I get it set up, I get my OneDrive installed. As soon as I sign into my OneDrive and enable the backup, it's going to download all of the info that was protected by this backup setting. And so everything in the desktop, documents, and pictures that I had selected here is automatically going to download and now be available on my new computer. So it really limits the impact of having your computer fail. So really at this point, I would just have to worry about installing my software and configuring some, personal settings on resolution and how I want everything laid out. But the important things, my files, they're all going to be here ready to go when I am. So that's a really cool thing that OneDrive can do for you. So some other things here in the settings that you can mess around with if you need to is going to be your network settings. So typically this is something I don't see most users having to work with, but there's a few occasions. So basically is what you can do with this is you can limit the bandwidth that it's using. And a really good use scenario for this would be is if you're traveling and using your phone as a hotspot. So in that scenario, you'll either want to completely disable sync, which you can do here, or you can limit it. So, for example, maybe if you're working on a few documents and you really need them to be online, so you still want them to sync. It's just you don't want it to use up all of your bandwidth on your hotspot on your phone because it's fairly limited where you're at. So, is all you can do. You just check mark this and you tell it however much you want to do, and that way it can. Um, It'll slow down the download and upload speed, but it won't totally turn it off. So you can continue working. It just may take a little longer to download and upload files. Let's see, we got a question here. Yes, Matt. We can cover security. There's a few things I can cover towards the end, so I will definitely get to that. All right, perfect. So moving on from the network settings, there's some other options here to just work on file collaboration, things like that. So you can choose to sync it with other applications like Word and Excel and things like that. This other setting here, this one's a pretty important one, is your sync conflicts notifications. So a lot of times is what you'll run into is an issue with sync conflicts where maybe you were working on a document on your laptop or another device while you were traveling or moving around and it went offline and you continued working on the document and then you come back online again when you get to where you were going and all of a sudden you kind of have two different versions of the same document. So you get a couple options available to you to resolve that issue when you get duplicates like that. Um, the messier option is to have duplicates and just have a different name on each of them, which it allows you the option to do. The cleaner version, and the way I recommend, is to use a merge. And as soon as you come online, it's going to have a pop up and say, there's a file sync issue. Do you want to merge these documents? And what it means by that is you'll have two versions of the same document, one that you edited an hour ago, and then one that you were just working on now. And it will just overwrite the old one with the one with the new changes. So usually that's the easiest way to get that cleaned up. The About tab is just some general info about your specific version. There's really nothing to worry about in there. So let's go over some other things here, specifically just on the File Explorer version on how you can create some different documents and share them and do some other stuff like that. So again, the really cool thing with this is it's a very similar feel to how all of your documents have been in the past, to where it's just in your File Explorer here, it's under your OneDrive folder, and then you have all of these items here. And again, I do want to point out, so if you see here, we have all of these. These are all synced to the one that you have in the cloud version in the web. It's all the same data, same info. So if you hold them side by side, let me sort by there. You'll see that they are all going to be the same things, which is really cool.
Hey Tim, we got another question.
Sure. Okay, let's see. One from Jason here. Okay, Jason Ibanez. So the short answer to that, Jason, is yes. Jason's question here, he was saying they have a NAS on site that they use to host files. And he was asking if it is possible to set up directories and share through all employees through the OneDrive. So there are a couple different ways you can go about that. The answer would take a little bit too long to explain here, but Jason, I can definitely follow up with you on that. But for everyone else listening, um, when you have a local storage device like that, like a NAS, or let it be a Windows server or something like that, there are ways that you can set up a OneDrive share, or a SharePoint share in some cases is a better fit for specific situations, to where you can set that up so that any data stored on that local storage device, such as a NAS, can be synced to a OneDrive folder. And then using that OneDrive, you can share it out to different people in the organization. Typically something like that, I would be looking more towards a SharePoint setup for if you're looking at org-wide sharing, but it definitely can be done with OneDrive if it's on a smaller scale. And Jason, I can definitely follow up with you after this if you have some more questions on that. Okay. So again, just back to some few things here. So I'll run you through what it looks like when you're creating a document and sharing it here, as well as looking at some of the autosave features. So again, we're in the OneDrive here. This is the local file explorer on this computer. So I'm just going to right click and I'm going to do new. We'll do another Word document. We'll call it my demo 2. And I'm just going to double click that and open it just like any other normal Word document you are working with. Okay, and this is a demo computer that I just set up before this. So, okay. So basically, if I put my info in here, okay, I didn't prep that. I apologize. So basically, you'll see here is when you add text, this autosave feature is on. So this is what I was talking about earlier, is to when you can run into some conflicts with having two different versions of the same file. So I recommend leaving autosave on, just like it was when we were working in the web app version here. So if you remember when we had this one open, so let me pull this open real quick. So we'll see, since this is in the web app version, it always saves in live time. And there's really no option to disable autosave when you're working in the web version because by its nature, it's in the web. So it's automatically saving every time you add something because otherwise it wouldn't know you did it. With your desktop version, if you're using the desktop version of Word, you can disable autosave and choose to just do a file save as to your local computer, as we've always done, in the past up until this point. It's always been file save as, and you'd save it to your documents folder. If you enable the autosave, it will function pretty much the same way as it does in the web version, to where every time you make a change or every time you type something, it's going to autosave it, and it's going to save it to that location on your OneDrive folder, which in turn, being in your OneDrive folder, is going to get synced up to the cloud. And we can see right now that it's syncing this. So again, that's how that works. So coming out of this Word document, I'm going to close this out and come back here. So I want to point out a few things here about the statuses. So we can see there's some different icons that we're seeing under this status tab here. So let's look at a few of these and kind of go over what they all mean. So the first one is the little blue cloud. It's a little blue outline with a white middle, the cloud. So that's probably going to be one of the most common ones you see. Is what that status means is that this particular document or folder, because these can apply to folders too, this means that this item is available for you to open on your desktop. So if I wanted to, I could open this demo one right now just by double clicking it. But it means that the blue icon with the cloud means that it is currently stored in the cloud and you have not opened it on this computer, and there are no local versions on your computer. So like if this computer were to lose its internet connection right now, I would not be able to open this file because this file is only stored in the cloud right now, which would be reflected by seeing it here. Now, the difference with that is once you open it, you're going to get the green circle with a green check mark, but there's a little bit of white around it. And we can see that. So as soon as I open this demo document here, it downloads it. And this is the one that we made earlier from the web version. And we can see that since I opened that, that immediately turned into the green circle with a check mark. And basically is what that means is that it's open on my system. I've opened it on my system recently, and it's downloaded a copy of it. So this was a really small document, so it opened almost instantly. Now, if this was a really big spreadsheet or a really big PDF or something like that, it may take a few seconds, or depending on your internet speed, maybe even a minute or so to download. That would have to be a really big document. But we can see here that that just downloaded 38 seconds ago when I went to open it. So that's what that one is going to mean. And that brings us to another really cool feature of OneDrive, which is going to be files on demand. Now, we touched a little bit on this earlier when we were looking at our settings here. So again, just as a reminder, so if we go under settings, we have this files on demand option here. So the cool thing with files on demand is it allows you to download a local copy of a document to your computer so that you can work on it even if you're not connected to the internet. So a really good use case for that again would be when you're traveling. So say for example you're going on a plane, taking a flight somewhere for a business trip. You take your laptop with you and you want to work on a document, but you know you're not going to have internet on that flight. So it's what you do before you leave is you go in and you find your document. So we'll use this demo test one. You right click on it, and then you have this option here that says always keep on this device. And as what that's going to do is that's going to download a version of this document to your device. And even if you disconnect from the internet, it's still going to be on your device because you've downloaded a full copy of that device or of that document. So if we click on this, it's going to download real quick and we can see that it's downloading. I think I clicked on the whole folder. Oh boy, sorry about that. I clicked on the wrong one there. But basically, once that downloads, there we go. So you'll see that it has now turned into a solid green circle there, and there's a little tiny white check mark in the middle there if you look real close. But basically, what that means is this file is now on this device and it's always on this device. And a really easy way that we can kind of go in and differentiate to tell which ones are or aren't is if we go in and we look at the properties of the file, we can look at its size on the computer. So we can see that this one is about 10K. Again, it's a really small file because there was only one line of text. But for example, if we were looking at another one, so for example, this demo one that we made here earlier, or here's one that is got the cloud icon. So if we look at this one, so size on disk, this indicates how much storage space on my desktop that it's taking up right now. It's taking up 0. So this one being the cloud icon means that it's stored in the cloud currently and it's not taking up any room on my computer, which can be a really good thing because, if you have a terabyte of data and files and pictures in your OneDrive account, you don't want to take up all that space on your local computer. So the really nice thing about the files on demand is you can pick and choose which files you download, and you only need to download the ones that you want to work on right now. So if you've got some older ones, like for example, a closed projects folder that is just for archive purposes, you're not in there every day, you can leave that one in the cloud, and it doesn't need to take up space on your computer. Whereas if we go back to this one that we just downloaded, we look at the properties on this one, we'll see size on disk is about 12 kilobits. Again, that's a really small file, but if you're looking in terms of entire folders, you can start to see where that's going to really save you some significant space. If you've got a folder that's a couple hundred gigs worth of data that you really don't need access to all the time, you can still access it if it's just in the cloud. Again, I can double click on any of these folders, and I don't have anything in this one right now, but I can still open them and see what's in there. I can open this one, and then we can see that it's still there. So again, since I just opened this one just turned green. So that's what those statuses mean. So a couple other icons I want to point out for statuses, just to be aware of them, is going to be what it looks like when it is shared with somebody. So when you share a folder or a file with somebody, it's going to get this little outline of a person next to it, and that means that it has been shared with someone. And so that's a really easy way to tell if you've shared a file. So I do want to run through sharing real quick as well, because that's another big feature that OneDrive makes really easy, is sharing files with people and allowing people to work in live time with you. So if we go to my demo, we right click on it, and then we go to share. So that's one that I was not doing there. Okay, let's do this from the web app. So we'll pick one here. So if you click on the web app, and we will share this one. So for example, if I send it to another demo account, so before we do that, if you click on the settings here, so again, if you click on this little icon here with the arrow, that is the share button. And we can actually pick and choose some specific settings for the share. So we can pick anyone. That's going to be the least secure. You can pick people in your company, people with existing access, which are people you've shared it with before, or you can just choose specific people in the next step. So for example, if we choose this one, or we can go with the anyone, you can also choose some different things like permissions level as to who can edit, who can review, or if they can only view and not make changes. The other really nice thing is you can choose to block downloads. So, and you can also set a password and an expiration date. So for example, if we say it's going to be a view only and it's going to expire next week, and we're going to block download, this document is going to be pretty locked down to whoever we share it with, so that they're only looking at it and they can't download it. So if we apply that, then we can add an email address here of anyone that we want to send it to. So we'll send it to SD Bench, which is my other test account for this webinar. So we'll share it with that person. And then we just click on send. So now the person that we share that file with is going to receive an email that's going to look kind of like this. Okay, one moment. So we'll go to that Outlook. So we'll see here. So this is what the person on the receiving end is going to get. They're going to get an email from you, and it's going to say that they shared a file with you. And then from there, they will have the option to open that file directly from there. And so there it is. This is the test one. And I am signed in. This is a different web browser page that I just pulled up here. And this is a totally different account outside of the organization. And again, administrators can choose to either open up or lock down for security reasons, who can share, who can't share, and what can be shared. So the admin side has a pretty granular control of that. Again, and we can see here that this user was not given permission to download or print the file. So for security reasons, it is a view only. So that helps keep things safe. So we'll go back to here. All right. So that's a little bit on sharing. Again, there you do have some other options when you go to do shares. Again, you can choose dates, passwords. You can put a password on it to password protect documents. You can do a share with anyone, which doesn't even require them to have a Microsoft account. Just know that when you do a share with anyone option, that's going to be the least secure. So pretty much anyone who gets their hands on the link for that document is going to be able to open it. So I typically recommend using specific people or people within your organization for the share feature options. So let me get back to one of our questions we had here. Okay, so for security of OneDrive. Okay, Matt, so files might get backed up to the cloud, could get compromised. So just be aware that security is obviously always a concern here at Sundog as well for everything we do. So we do want to make sure that everything is safe. As far as OneDrive goes, or any cloud service, you want to make sure that you're definitely using a reputable provider. So there are lots of them out there. That's why we recommend Microsoft, because they do encrypt their data. You have the options to do that, as well as other things like making sure your accounts are secure. So it's just like anything else. So take your email account. So if you have your email with Microsoft 365, there are steps that you're going to want to take to make sure that that is locked down. So one of the first ones and most important is making sure you have MFA enabled on all of your accounts. And the nice thing with the 365 product line is it's all one account. So if you enable MFA for your Outlook account, that also applies to your OneDrive account. So that's the first step. Make sure you have one MFA enabled. Second step is going to be making sure you have complex passwords that you are changing out regularly. So again, don't use your pet's name or your first car or something like that, real common. Definitely use complex passwords. I always recommend something like a sentence with proper punctuation, things like that, and spaces. That always creates a really secure password. Moving on from that, if you're working in an organization where security is not only a concern, but maybe a requirement for what you're doing. So, for example, if you're a government contractor or something like that, and you're working with really sensitive info, Microsoft also has a plan available specifically for high security organizations like that for government contractors, to where if you are on one of those particular Microsoft tenants, your data is only going to be stored in secure data centers within the US only. So those are options that are available if you're working in an environment that requires a high level of security for those files. Matt, I hope that kind of answered that for you. And if you do have any other additional questions for that, feel free to reach out and we can definitely help answer any other questions you have. So moving on from that, let's jump back into just getting things wrapped up here, because I don't want to take too long. I know we got to stick around 45 minutes here. So I will go ahead and wrap up. So let me jump back to our other page here. Give me one moment. So let's jump back. Okay. All right, great, Matt. Glad that helped for you. So did anyone else have any other questions for me today? We're getting about ready to wrap up. We're right at about at our time limit here for 45 minutes. So just want to let you all know that Mallory does a really great job of keeping all of our social media and our YouTube page up to date. So there's always lots of little tech tip videos and stuff that are coming out regularly. So I do encourage you to check all that out. Again, the YouTube channel is probably going to be the one that I would recommend for the most info. That's where all these webinars will be posted, as well as lots of little short 2-minute tech tip videos and other things like that are going to be available on there. All right. So if we don't have any more questions, I will go ahead and wrap things up for you. And again, if anyone has any additional questions or would like to hear more, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to get anything answered for you. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.